She struggled to even articulate the name of the delicacy listed on the menu. This was the billionaire's intended cruel jest. The entire gathering burst into amusement, with the sole exception of the server. And when the black attendant calmly enunciated each French term he mispronounced, the mirth vanished instantly. This was not merely an account of degradation, but of a concealed proficiency finally finding its voice. Within Le Lait Papon, a pocket of French sophistication nestled within Manhattan's opulent embrace. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, resembling countless suspended stars. A grand piano in the alcove filled the atmosphere with delicate classical compositions, mingling with the rich perfume of truffle-infused butter and rosemary-scented lamb. Immaculate white linens adorned each circular table, accentuating the polished silverware arranged with meticulous precision. It was a setting reserved exclusively for the privileged few. Each diner appeared naturally suited to enjoy the advantages life had granted them, exuding an aura of self-assurance and inherent refinement. At the heart of this magnificent dining space was a specially designated table for the billionaire Leonard Dawson, a man whose reputation was synonymous with substantial financial transactions and triumphant Wall Street ventures, but also with legendary haughtiness. Tonight, he was accompanied by his principal associates, all impeccably attired, their wrists graced by expensive timepieces that caught the gentle illumination of the overhead lights. Standing attentively by that table was Zoe Brooks, a young African-American server, poised and ready to receive their requests. Zoe possessed a distinctive charm. Her smooth, dark hair was neatly secured. Her healthy, dusky complexion had a luminous quality, and her deep, intelligent eyes conveyed a quiet, inner fortitude. She wore a crisp white blouse and a flawlessly pressed black apron, embodying professionalism and seriousness in every detail. With an impeccable bearing and a polite, collected smile, she approached Mr. Dawson's table. "Good evening," Zoe greeted softly in French. "Are you prepared to select your starters?" Leonard raised an eyebrow, cast a glance at her, then gestured dismissively towards the French-printed menu, its elegant script presented on substantial paper, akin to a banner of irritation. He furrowed his brow, paused, and deliberately butchered the name of the renowned dish. "I'll have the foie gras with... What is this called? Bouillabaisse," he declared loudly, ensuring his pronouncement reached everyone. Zoe tilted her head politely and offered a gentle smile. "You mean foie gras with a bouillabaisse base, sir?" For a fleeting moment, Leonard's smirk faltered. Then, with a sneer, he turned to his companions, speaking loudly enough for all to overhear. "Look at that. She can actually read the menu. How utterly surprising." Laughter erupted around the table, sharp and dismissive. His associates, already somewhat inebriated from the fine red wine, eagerly joined in, viewing Zoe as nothing more than a source of amusement, an insignificant palate cleanser in their lavish repast. Zoe remained immobile, her expression serene, although the hand gripping her pen trembled almost imperceptibly. A flicker of hurt crossed her deep-set eyes, a pain she struggled to conceal. She offered no further words, merely nodded and noted the order with quiet dignity, continuing her duties with absolute professionalism. In that brief interlude, time seemed to suspend around Zoe. She had encountered numerous condescending glances like this previously. Each instance, she had remained silent, enduring them patiently, for she understood that her genuine worth was not defined by their cruel pronouncements. She silently reminded herself that sometimes quietude can communicate more effectively than any verbal retort. Turning and walking back towards the kitchen, Zoe heard the residual echo of laughter pursuing her. Each sound felt like a tiny shard piercing her pride. It served as a reminder that, regardless of her skills or intelligence, in their perception, she remained merely another black waitress, undeserving of respect. What Leonard Dawson could never comprehend, however, was that beneath that modest uniform and behind that composed, courteous facade lay a vast reservoir of knowledge, an extraordinary linguistic talent, and a profound affection for culture that she had nurtured in secrecy for years. His ostentatious jest had ignited the spark for a remarkable future journey, one in which Zoe Brooks would emerge from the obscurity of service to claim the deference and standing she had always merited. As the kitchen door softly closed behind her, Zoe drew a deep breath and clutched her order pad firmly. She reassured herself that this was merely the commencement, and that in the near future, those who had once disregarded her would be compelled to pause and attend to Zoe Brooks with the profound respect they had so long withheld. When the kitchen door clicked shut behind Zoe, the mocking laughter still faintly resonated in the distance, like persistent small waves crashing against the shores of her mind. She slowly removed her apron, carefully hung it on the modest brass hook by the wall, and then stepped out of Le Papin's opulent dining hall and into her own distinct reality. Once outside, a cool evening breeze brushed against her skin, causing Zoe to experience a slight shiver. The illuminated silhouettes of Manhattan's towering structures were reflected on the damp pavement, creating shimmering bands of color. In stark contrast to the restaurant's warm, sophisticated ambiance, Zoe melded into the active throng. People who never appeared to rest, each carrying their individual solitude and unspoken aspirations. The deep reverberation of the subway train traversing through dark, crowded subterranean passages carried her back to her humble Brooklyn residence. Zoe's neighborhood presented a stark contrast to the glamour she had just departed. Faded paint adorned the buildings, and a street lamp with a yellowish tint cast a faint glow over the narrow lane leading to her front door. She ascended the protesting creak of the staircase, each step groaning under her fatigued feet after a lengthy day of labor. Inside her dwelling, Zoe called out softly, "Nah, I'm home." From the living area, a youthful voice, tinged with frustration, responded, "Sis, I just can't grasp it. I despise geometry." Zoe offered a gentle smile as she entered the room. There, sprawled on the floor amidst numerous open textbooks and notebooks filled with exasperated scribbles, was her younger sister. 16-year-old Nina possessed a delicate appearance akin to Zoe's, but her youthful countenance was clouded with impatience and a lack of self-belief. Settling down beside her, Zoe placed a comforting hand on Na's shoulder and spoke in a calm, reassuring tone. "You know, when I was your age, geometry felt like an impenetrable labyrinth." Na looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "But Zoe, why do I need to learn this subject? It doesn't benefit us in any way. Look at you. You speak so many languages, and you're so intelligent, yet out there, people still condescend to you." Zoe's heart ached at those words. She recognized that her own past adversities had inadvertently become Na's burden, diminishing her sister's confidence in herself and in life. Taking a deliberate breath, Zoe met Na's gaze with gentle resolve. "Nina, listen to me. Knowledge is not a tool people employ to judge you. It is a key that unlocks pathways that no one else can seal. Others might dismiss you because they fail to perceive your true value, but when you hold your head high, secure in your own understanding, no one can destabilize you." She picked up Na's notebook, sketched some simple geometric figures with her pencil, and patiently guided her through each progression. Gradually, Na's tension eased, her eyes softening as she followed every stroke on the page. "See," Zoe continued, "these elements may seem insignificant at first, but if you discern their underlying structures, you will cease to feel apprehension. Much like in life, when you comprehend yourself, you will never fear the opinions of others." Na nodded thoughtfully, remaining silent for a considerable duration, then whispered, "Zoe, today at the restaurant, did they upset you again?" Zoe paused before offering a reassuring smile. "They might attempt to wound me with their words, but they cannot alter who I am internally, and I wish for you to remember that, Na." Her gaze drifted across their small, affectionate apartment. The shelves were lined with substantial language textbooks, her own well-used journal resting on the table, filled with her daily annotations. These were tangible proofs of Zoe's persistence, intellect, and quiet self-esteem. Despite life's challenges, she had never relinquished her conviction in her intrinsic worth. Late in the evening, the street lamp outside flickered, serving as a reminder that every inhabitant of this vast metropolis faces their own private struggles. Zoe pressed a soft kiss to her sister's forehead, then rose and moved across the room to prepare for her nightly linguistic study. She opened her foreign language text and began reciting aloud in a fluid, melodious voice. In that moment, Zoe Brooks's world was no longer defined by Leonard Dawson's scornful laughter or the dismissive glances she had endured. It was shaped by her fervent pursuit of knowledge, her profound love for words, and her unwavering determination to demonstrate to the world and to herself the extraordinary merit she had cultivated over these many years. Under the subdued glow of the urban illumination, Zoe Brooks continued her silent, steady progression towards recognition, not solely for her own benefit, but for her sister Nana, who observed her with eyes brimming with admiration and affection. Zoe's gentle recitation of a foreign language drifted softly into the tranquil night. Her dreamlike eyes focused on the page, each familiar line guiding her thoughts back to distant days spent in beloved Paris, where she had experienced the most beautiful chapters of her existence. Her gaze softened, her breathing steadied, and in an instant she was transported back to that moment, the very first day she set foot in the esteemed Sciences Po, when the Parisian sunlight bathed every cobblestone street. She recalled the rapid beating of her heart with apprehensive excitement, her hands trembling, and the overwhelming sense of wonder she experienced observing students from across the globe. Bright, driven individuals, harboring grand ambitions. She had been one of them, an American undergraduate with soft curls, healthy brown skin, and eyes that shone with an ardent passion. Zoe distinguished herself not only through her academic excellence, but also through her aptitude for languages, possessing fluency in French, Italian, and Spanish, earning the respect of her peers and high expectations from her instructors. In that vivid recollection, she remembered a crisp autumn afternoon when Professor Etienne Laurent, an erudite older gentleman with silver hair and sharp eyes peering through small spectacles, had requested her to remain after class. Zoe approached his desk with a touch of hesitation, her heart pounding, but instead of a reprimand, he offered a warm smile and sincere commendation. "Miss Brooks, I have instructed numerous gifted students. Yet I have seldom encountered an individual with your linguistic talent. The capacity to connect cultures through language is the most valuable gift one can possess. Keep that sentiment close to your heart." Zoe's heart had leaped at those words. That encouragement became a potent force, reinforcing her self-belief and validating her inherent worth. Over the subsequent months in Paris, Zoe immersed herself in discovery, academic study, and research. She participated in vibrant seminars, authored an exceptional paper on the critical role of multilingual diplomacy in resolving international disputes, and even represented her institution at a global forum in Geneva, confidently addressing hundreds of diplomats, garnering resounding applause and solidifying her reputation as a promising young talent. However, at the zenith of her promising future, Zoe received a life-altering telephone call from the United States on a chilling Parisian afternoon. The news devastatingly altered her trajectory. Her father had experienced a sudden cerebral hemorrhage and passed away shortly after her mother succumbed to cancer. Nana, her sole younger sibling, then a mere 13 years old, was left an orphan with no other familial support. Zoe stood frozen in her compact dormitory room, her breath caught in her throat, tears welling in her eyes, her heart shattering. The following day, Zoe proceeded directly to Professor Laurent's office to inform him of her imperative need to return to America immediately, rendering her unable to complete her studies or her unfulfilled dissertation. Upon learning of her circumstances, he remained silent for a considerable interval before gently placing his hand on her shoulder, his eyes conveying profound understanding and regret. "Zoe, I am deeply saddened, But I comprehend and endorse your decision. There are aspects of life that hold greater significance than career or acclaim, and you have made the right choice. Remember that the knowledge you have acquired here is yours eternally. It will serve as your bedrock in the challenging times ahead. During the flight back to the United States, Zoe cast one final glance at Paris through the airplane window, tears coursing down her face. She understood that she was relinquishing a cherished dream, but she remained certain that returning home to care for Nana was the only course of action available to her. The ensuing months in New York proved more arduous than Zoe had anticipated. Beyond mourning the loss of both her parents, she grappled with the financial pressure of earning a livelihood, providing for her sister, and deferring her academic aspirations. Working as a waitress at La Papon, an endeavor both humble and at times agonizing, was her sole means of covering essential living expenses. Nevertheless, even after forsaking Paris and her promising career, Zoe never abandoned her passion for knowledge and languages. Every weary evening after concluding her work, she would sit quietly in her modest room, opening the very books that had accompanied her in elegant Paris, continuing to read and write to prevent herself from becoming lost amidst life's adversities. In the hushed darkness of that night's chamber, Zoe blinked away tears as she reminisced about Paris. Although that beautiful past had receded, and the present was challenging and unjust, Zoe Brooks never regretted her decision. Her sacrifice underscored her inherent dignity and affirmed that a person's true value resides not in fame or commendations, but in the choices they make when confronted with adversity. Outside, the city lights continued to gleam brilliantly, as if offering Zoe solace with the assurance that before long the world would recognize her not merely as an unassuming server, but as the extraordinary individual she was always destined to be. The city lights continued to sparkle beyond the window of her small apartment, akin to a distant assurance to Zoe that the world had not forgotten what she rightfully deserved. Yet, caught between that remote hope and the stark reality, Zoe understood she must persist with quiet determination, at least for the present moment. The subsequent few days at La Papon passed relatively without incident. Zoe exerted her utmost effort to disregard the acerbic remarks Leonard Dawson had directed at her. She reminded herself to concentrate on her professional duties, on her sister Nana, and on the positive aspects she was steadily cultivating. However, life did not grant her an easy reprieve. Just as Zoe began to believe the tempest had subsided, the restaurant's entrance swung open once more, and Leonard Dawson entered, accompanied by another contingent of influential business figures, his characteristic arrogant gaze and smirk unaltered. From her position behind the service counter, Zoe instantly recognized Leonard's resonant laughter, so assured that it pierced through the gentle ambient music. She took a slow, deliberate breath, smoothed her apron, and approached the table with the composure she had diligently cultivated. "Good evening," Zoe inquired politely, her voice as gentle as ever, revealing nothing of her inner state. Leonard Dawson looked up, his eyes alight with amused recognition, his lips curling into that familiar, audacious smile. "Well, it's our little server once again," he announced deliberately loudly, ensuring everyone at the table could hear. "Last time, she provided me with a particularly memorable experience with the French menu." The gentlemen surrounding him, though unfamiliar faces, shared the same cold, curious amusement, turning their attention to Zoe as if anticipating further entertainment. Zoe maintained her unwavering stance, though her heart ached with a familiar pang. "Let's ascertain if she has shown any improvement today," Leonard continued, theatrically opening the menu. His gaze scanned the French descriptions, then settled upon an intricate dish, his expression challenging her. "I shall have this one. Confit de canard à l'orange. Correct, server, or do I need to elaborate on its meaning once more?" Laughter immediately erupted, the cruel variety that tightened Zoe's chest. Nevertheless, she maintained a composed facial expression, resolute in her determination not to betray the depth of her hurt. "Yes, sir. Confit de canard à l'orange is an excellent selection," Zoe responded with impeccable, flawless French pronunciation. This only seemed to amplify Leonard's delight. He chuckled and mockingly applauded her persistence. "Oh, how commendable. You must have dedicated considerable hours to mastering that correctly. I truly admire your diligence, little server." The table erupted in laughter once more, and Zoe felt diminished and more isolated than ever in that grand, opulent dining room. Yet she remained poised and courteous, suppressing the surge of emotion within. "Thank you, sir. I shall convey your order to the kitchen immediately," she stated softly, then turned and hurried through the kitchen door to escape Leonard's derisive gaze. No sooner had she stepped inside than a gentle voice inquired beside her, "Zoe, are you all right?" It was Jake, the new server with kind blue eyes who had joined a few days prior. He had witnessed the entire exchange, and his concern was evident. "I'm fine," Zoe managed a faint smile. "But why didn't you confront him?" "Someone like that deserves a lesson," Jake commented, a flash of anger in his eyes. Zoe remained silent for a moment, her gaze reflecting a deep, knowing tranquility. Then she replied, her voice quiet yet firm. "Jake, sometimes silence is not an admission of defeat. Just because I did not speak at that moment does not signify that I never will. When I truly raise my voice, they will be at a loss for where to direct their attention." Jake regarded her with curiosity, still perplexed by her words. Zoe simply patted his shoulder with an enigmatic smile and slipped away towards the kitchen. Back at the table, Leonard Dawson continued his boisterous pronouncements to his affluent companions, entirely oblivious to the fact that behind Zoe's composed exterior, she was quietly preparing for the day she would finally voice her truth, a day when all those who had ever belittled her would fall silent and bow before the genuine power of her intellect and self-respect. Outside the restaurant, the city lights continued to blaze, illuminating Zoe's face as if to offer a fresh reminder. That day will dawn, and when it does, the world will have no alternative but to confront her. The city lights continued to glitter beyond the window of her small apartment, much like a distant promise to Zoe that the world had not forgotten what she deserved. Yet, suspended between those far-off assurances and the harsh reality, Zoe knew she had to continue progressing with quiet persistence, at least for the immediate future. The subsequent days at La Papaume passed fairly smoothly. Zoe made every effort not to dwell on Leonard Dawson's disparaging remarks. She reminded herself to maintain focus on her work, on her sister Nena, and on the positive developments she was gradually establishing. However, life would not release its hold so readily. Just as Zoe began to believe the ordeal had concluded, the restaurant's entrance swung open once more, and Leonard Dawson entered, accompanied by yet another group of influential business associates, his arrogant gaze and smirk remaining unchanged. From her vantage point behind the service counter, Zoe immediately recognized Leonard's distinctive booming laughter. It cut through the soft background music like a proclamation of overconfidence. She inhaled slowly, straightened her apron, and approached the table with the practiced calm she had honed repeatedly. "Good evening. Are you ready to place your orders?" Zoe inquired politely, her tone as gentle as ever, betraying no hint of emotion. Leonard Dawson looked up, his eyes sparkling with amusement upon spotting her. A familiar, impudent smile curved the corner of his mouth. "Well, if it isn't our little server," he declared, deliberately raising his voice so that the entire table could hear. "Last time, she provided me with quite the remarkable experience concerning the French menu." The gentlemen accompanying him, though new faces, exhibited the same cold, inherent curiosity, turning towards Zoe as if anticipating further entertainment. Zoe maintained her steady posture, unperturbed, though her heart throbbed with that all-too-familiar sting. "Let's determine if she has improved her delivery today," Leonard continued, dramatically unfurling the menu. He scanned the French descriptions and paused at an elaborate dish, his eyes issuing a silent challenge. "I shall have this one. Confit de canard à l'orange. Is that correct, server? Or would you prefer I elucidate its meaning once more? Laughter erupted instantaneously, sharp and derisive. Zoe felt her chest tighten as if a constriction had taken hold, but she maintained a composed expression, steadfast in her resolve not to reveal the extent of her distress. Yes, sir. Confit de canard à l'orange is an excellent selection, she replied, enunciating every French word flawlessly. This only seemed to further incite Leonard. He laughed and mockingly applauded her tenacity. Oh, how admirable! Your dedication is truly impressive. You must have spent ages perfecting that. Your tenacity is truly impressive, my young server. More laughter erupted, and Zoe felt even more insignificant and isolated within the vast, opulent chamber. Nevertheless, she maintained her politeness and professionalism, suppressing the surge of emotion within her. Thank you kindly, sir. I shall convey your order to the kitchen presently, she replied softly, then turned and hurried through the kitchen entrance, escaping Leonard's derisive gaze, with clear azure eyes and a compassionate spirit. He had observed the entire encounter, and his concern was palpable. I am quite all right, Zoe affirmed with a forced, reassuring smile. However, why did you not confront him? A man of his caliber certainly warrants a lesson, Jake stated, a flash of indignation in his eyes. Zoe paused, her gaze mirroring a profound, unspoken determination. Then, with measured yet unwavering firmness, she responded, Jake, the fact that I remain silent now does not imply that I shall never speak. When I truly raise my voice, they will— Jake regarded her with inquisitive interest, still pondering her cryptic words. Zoe simply offered his shoulder a pat, accompanied by a knowing smile, before returning to her post. He continued to boast boisterously to his affluent associates, entirely oblivious to the fact that beneath Zoe's placid demeanor, she was quietly steeling herself for the moment she would finally voice her truth, the day when all who had ever diminished her would be silenced by the genuine power of her intellect and self-worth. The stars continued to twinkle brightly across Zoe's visage, as if to serve as a renewed reminder. That day shall dawn, and when it does, the world will be unable to avert its gaze. The lingering tension permeated La Papon's sophisticated banquet hall following Zoe's courteous yet incisive retort. The influential attendees now exchanged covert glances toward Leonard Dawson, as if silently re-evaluating their perception of the once supremely self-assured billionaire. Leonard stood frozen for a beat, attempting to maintain a composed countenance, but it was evident his arrogance had sustained a significant blow. At that precise instant, from the far extremity of the table, a distinguished gentleman of middle age, sporting salt-and-pepper hair and tasteful round spectacles, interjected. It was Jacques Monroe, a celebrated French investor, lauded for his refined sensibilities and sharp insight into global finance. His voice, warm and courteous, was imbued with genuine surprise as he addressed Zoe directly. "Pardon me," he commenced. "Are you perhaps Zoe Brooks, the esteemed speaker who delivered that remarkable address on multilingual diplomacy at the Geneva Conference several years prior?" The assembly fell into a profound stillness. All the distinguished guests turned their attention toward Zoe, their expressions a mosaic of curiosity and astonishment. Zoe felt a fleeting sense of unease at the unexpected inquiry. She had never conceived that any of the evening's attendees would recall that particular event. "Yes," she confirmed with a modest inclination of her head. "I did indeed present in Geneva." Jacques Monroe's countenance radiated with unfeigned delight. He turned to the others, clearly animated. "I recall that presentation quite vividly. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Zoe Brooks, one of the most exceptional young orators at the International Forum on Multilingual Diplomacy in Geneva. I vividly remember her compelling discourse on the crucial role language plays in resolving global disputes. Every individual present that day, myself included, was profoundly impressed by her intellectual acuity and eloquent delivery. Murmurs of astonishment swept through the banquet. The VIPs exchanged looks of newly discovered respect and keen interest. They were beginning to comprehend that the seemingly unassuming young server before them possessed a far greater depth of character than they had initially presumed. She truly spoke in Geneva, a young businesswoman whispered to her companion, her eyes wide with amazement. Jacques nodded with evident enthusiasm and continued, his admiration palpable. Precisely. She was a top-tier student at Sciences Po Paris, proficient in multiple languages and highly esteemed within academic circles. I never anticipated encountering her here this evening, in this very establishment. All eyes were fixed upon Zoe, while Leonard Dawson remained utterly immobile. His complexion shifted from pallor to a flushed crimson, a humiliation he had never before experienced, washing over him. He, who had always considered himself superior to all others. It was only then that he grasped the profound error of underestimating Zoe, a person he had never imagined could possibly embarrass him in the presence of so many of Manhattan's most influential figures. Leonard felt the piercing, unsympathetic scrutiny of the esteemed guests bearing down on him. In that moment, for the very first time, he lost all semblance of composure as his pride disintegrated before the very individuals who had once lauded him, all due to a server he had dismissed as inconsequential. He desperately sought a witty rejoinder to salvage his dignity, but his mind went completely blank. Throughout the entire ordeal, Zoe remained composed, her eyes shimmering with quiet pride. She added softly, as if reaffirming her identity to the stunned assembly. "It is incredibly meaningful that you recall my Geneva presentation, Mr. Monroe. I have always held the conviction that mutual respect and the power of language are instrumental in resolving any challenge, whether in the realm of diplomacy or in everyday interactions." Her gentle words resonated with clarity and strength, eliciting discreet nods of agreement from several guests. In that instant, Zoe was no longer merely a server. To everyone present, she transformed into a young intellectual, a woman of inherent dignity and profound learning, recognized and admired on an international stage. Amidst the ensuing hush, Leonard Dawson apprehended the full gravity of his miscalculation regarding Zoe. Where once there had been disdain, now resided his profound shame. He dared not meet anyone's gaze. The self-assured billionaire was now the one standing in isolation, mortified before the very assembly that had once held him in high regard. Zoe offered a polite inclination of her head, then quietly withdrew from the table, leaving behind an atmosphere charged with respect and awe. Jacques Monroe watched her departure with warm admiration, while Leonard Dawson remained seated in stunned silence, experiencing a depth of humiliation he had never previously encountered. The banquet hall lapsed into silence once more, but this time every eye was directed toward Zoe Brooks, the very individual they had underestimated mere moments before. The crystal chandeliers overhead seemed to gleam with enhanced brilliance, illuminating the image of a woman whom no one would ever again dare to dismiss. Soft applause and admiring glances continued to follow Zoe as she departed from the banquet table, leaving behind a palpable aura of respectful surprise. In a dimly lit corner of the establishment, Leonard Dawson stood utterly motionless, his vacant eyes fixed upon the wine-glass before him. For the first time in his existence, the man who prided himself on his power and feigned wisdom felt utterly vanquished and diminished. He was enveloped by a profound bewilderment as all his erroneous assumptions about Zoe crumbled before his very eyes. Meanwhile, Madame Deline Martha, the elegant and sophisticated proprietor of La Papon, had observed the entire spectacle from a distance. She approached Zoe discreetly, her eyes brimming with understated pride and profound satisfaction. In a warm, maternal tone, she addressed her protégée. "Zoe, what you have just accomplished is truly commendable. I believe we have another significant engagement this evening, a special international networking reception in the VIP suite. However, regrettably, our scheduled interpreter has just had to cancel unexpectedly. Would you be so kind as to assist me by serving as the interpreter for this vital meeting?" Zoe was momentarily taken aback, then swiftly regained her composure. She recognized this as an unparalleled opportunity to demonstrate her true capabilities, not only to Leonard but to all who had ever doubted her. "Of course, Madame Marta, I would be honored," Zoe replied softly, yet with unwavering confidence, her heart fluttering with anticipation. Minutes later, Zoe re-entered the VIP suite, a picture of transformation. She was adorned in a simple yet elegant evening gown, her hair elegantly styled to showcase a radiant, intelligent countenance. From the moment she graced the room with her presence, the international guests were captivated by her charm and effortless grace. Leonard stood at the periphery of the room, observing silently. His heart gave a jolt when he realized that the brilliant woman commanding everyone's attention was none other than Zoe Brooks, the very individual he had once dismissed. He experienced, for the first time, the stinging bitterness of having underestimated her. A tumultuous mix of confusion and resentment churned within his chest, yet beneath it all lay an undeniable, unspoken respect. Within the VIP salon, Zoe stepped forward and commenced interpreting the guests' dialogue with fluid ease. She seamlessly transitioned between French, Italian, and Spanish, earning appreciative nods for her exceptional linguistic prowess. The attendees were astounded. She not only translated words, but also conveyed subtle cultural nuances, enriching and deepening the exchange. An Italian guest exclaimed with unfeigned admiration, "This is truly remarkable. She is not merely an interpreter. She possesses the demeanor of a seasoned diplomat." Jacques Monroe, who was also in attendance, offered an approving smile and added, "Indeed, true brilliance cannot remain concealed." "I am immensely pleased that we have had the opportunity to witness Zoe's exceptional talent this evening." From his vantage point, Leonard absorbed the accolades, feeling his humiliation intensify. The very individuals who had once applauded him were now enthralled by a woman he had previously scorned. Zoe continued her duties with graceful authority, her soothing yet commanding voice resonating within the hearts of all listeners, opening new cultural vistas and dispelling any preconceived notions based on social standing or appearance. In the eyes of these distinguished international guests, Zoe Brooks was no longer simply a server. She had become a potent symbol of intelligence, culture, and refined elegance. As the event drew to a conclusion, Zoe offered a modest bow to a wave of enthusiastic applause. Her gaze happened to intersect with Leonard's across the expanse of the room. For the first time, Zoe perceived genuine remorse and a palpable sense of helplessness in the arrogant billionaire's eyes. He swiftly averted his gaze, overcome with shame, marking the initial instance in his life where his pride truly began to unravel. When the gathering concluded, Zoe returned to Madame Marta, who offered a nod of profound satisfaction and heartfelt gratitude. "Zoe, your performance was truly outstanding. Tonight, you not only salvaged the event, but instilled immense pride in all of us who work alongside you." Zoe responded with a humble smile, her heart light yet overflowing with pride. In that precise moment, she understood that everything had irrevocably changed. The door she had once believed irrevocably closed was now wide open, illuminating a path toward a future far more auspicious and brilliant. Miles away, Leonard departed the event in a state of bitter silence, leaving behind the indelible image of Zoe Brooks, poised and dignified, the woman he would never again dare to underestimate. The instant the VIP room door closed behind Zoe, genuine applause and heartfelt commendations continued to resound through the elegant halls of La Papon. In a mere matter of hours, news had spread with astonishing rapidity about the young African-American server who had garnered the admiration of Manhattan's most influential business magnates. International guests, enthusiastically led by Jacques Monroe, took to social media platforms to share their genuine impressions, igniting vibrant discussions across professional, cultural, and academic spheres. By the following morning, Zoe Brooks' name had become the prevalent topic of conversation among entrepreneurs and investors. Economic and cultural publications featured her prominently in numerous articles, marveling at her exceptional academic background at Sciences Po and her acclaimed role as a speaker at the Geneva Conference years earlier. Madame Deline Marta swiftly recognized that this was more than a fortuitous occurrence. It represented a pivotal turning point for the restaurant. With her astute business acumen, she resolved to capitalize on Zoe's newfound prominence to expand the La Papon brand into the European market, commencing in Paris, her own cherished homeland, where cultural prestige reigns supreme. One bright morning, Deline summoned Zoe to her office. The room's serene, classic ambiance immediately put Zoe at ease as she entered. Deline spoke with warmth, her eyes alight with trust and profound respect. "Zoe, I am certain you are well aware of the unfolding events around us. I have received an overwhelming number of calls and emails from high-profile international clientele. They are all eager to learn more about the woman who has so profoundly reshaped their perceptions of hospitality." Zoe inclined her head modestly, her eyes sparkling with recognition. "I was merely acting in accordance with what felt right, madam." Madame Deline offered a gentle smile and continued in a serious yet affectionate tone. "Your humility and exceptional talent have deeply inspired me. I would like to offer you the position of our cultural advisor and language trainer for our new staff as we venture into the European market. It is a significant undertaking, but I have absolute confidence in your ability to excel." Zoe's heart pounded with a mixture of joy and profound gratitude. After all she had endured, she had finally been presented with the opportunity her abilities deserved. "I am deeply honored by this offer, madam. I pledge to dedicate my utmost effort and assure you that I will not disappoint," she responded, her voice steady and sincere. Meanwhile, Leonard Dawson soon came to the stark realization that his prior disrespect towards Zoe carried far more severe repercussions than he had ever envisioned. One late afternoon, within the sleek confines of his office atop a prominent downtown skyscraper, he received a rather abrupt telephone call from Paris, where he was on the cusp of finalizing a multi-million-dollar business agreement. "Mr. Dawson, I must regrettably inform you that our Parisian associate has elected to terminate their contractual arrangement with your company. They became privy to your treatment of Miss Zoe Brooks, a figure who was once held in high esteem at the International Forum in Geneva, and have consequently refused to engage with anyone who exhibits such a profound lack of basic respect for human dignity." Leonard froze, the telephone trembling precariously in his hand, as a wave of anger and profound disappointment coursed through him. Only then did he truly comprehend the immense magnitude of his error in underestimating Zoe. His mockery and arrogance had not only resulted in his personal humiliation before the city's influential figures, but had also inflicted direct and tangible damage upon his reputation and financial standing. In the ensuing days, Leonard virtually disappeared from public view. Whispers of the lost Paris contract circulated rapidly, significantly undermining his once unassailable business credibility. His business associates began to reassess their affiliations, and he apprehended with growing trepidation that the reputation he had so carefully cultivated was rapidly disintegrating. Meanwhile, Zoe enthusiastically embraced her new role at La Papon, emerging as a guiding light for progress in both hospitality and business culture. She diligently conducted language classes and cultural training sessions for the incoming staff, drawing inspiration from her own remarkable journey. The restaurant buzzed with a renewed sense of purpose as every employee felt more valued and respected, a direct consequence of Zoe's positive influence. Zoe's renown continued to expand its reach. She was no longer merely a server. She had ascended to become an emblem of dignity, intellectual prowess, and unwavering perseverance in the face of adversity. Far removed in his solitary office, Leonard Dawson sat in quiet contemplation of his regret. The once formidable billionaire now understood all too well that his hubris and misjudgment had exacted a steep price, and there was no longer any avenue to rectify the damage incurred. While Zoe began to reap the well-deserved rewards of her unyielding efforts, in another part of the city, Leonard Dawson found himself confronted with a starkly contrasting reality. The repercussions of his arrogant and negligent conduct had begun to propagate, permeating every aspect of his personal life and professional endeavors. Merely days after the news of Leonard's forfeiture of that critical Paris contract had surfaced, a highly significant private meeting convened at a luxurious Midtown Manhattan hotel. Within a spacious conference room paneled with exquisite wood, Jacques Monroe and his international associates were seated around an expansive table, their expressions grave, contemplative, and keenly observant. A palpable silence hung heavy in the room, underscoring the seriousness of the matter under deliberation. Jacques Monroe was the first to break the silence, his tone measured yet carrying considerable weight. "Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we are all cognizant of the reason for our assembly today. Mr. Leonard Dawson's recent actions have not only tarnished his personal reputation, but have also cast an unfavorable shadow over all of us involved in this collaborative venture." A German associate interjected promptly, his sharp gaze betraying evident disappointment. "I wholeheartedly concur with Mr. Monroe. We cannot possibly continue to collaborate with an individual who demonstrates such blatant disrespect for fundamental principles of conduct and communication. The issue extends beyond Mr. Dawson's loss of a significant contract. It is the erosion of our trust that is paramount." Others seated around the table nodded in agreement, some visibly displaying their displeasure. Among them were individuals who had previously been closest to Leonard and had expressed the greatest confidence in him, but who now felt profoundly betrayed by his arrogance and lack of respect. Following a moment of thoughtful deliberation, Jacques Monroe delivered the final resolution with unshakable clarity. "We have collectively determined that Leonard Dawson will no longer be a participant in this project. We require a partner who not only possesses exceptional business acumen but also embodies the core values of respect and human dignity." The decision was rendered with the finality of a cold decree. Yet there were no dissenting voices. Every participant recognized it as the only logical course of action. Shortly thereafter, in his office situated atop a midtown skyscraper, Leonard sat in a state of immobility at his grand desk, his gaze fixed on the empty space before him, consumed by a pervasive sense of anxiety and bewilderment. In the oppressive quietude, a soft knock at the door jolted him back to the immediate present. His young assistant, Adam, entered, his expression conveying a discernible tension. Avoiding Leonard's direct gaze, he spoke haltingly. "Mr. Dawson, I have just received confirmation from our Parisian associates. They conducted a private meeting this morning and have resolved to terminate their collaboration with us. You are no longer affiliated with the project, sir." Leonard heard the words, registering their clarity, but found them difficult to fully comprehend. It felt as though his entire world was imploding. He stared at Adam in utter shock, his voice trembling with nascent anger. "What exactly are you implying? How could they possibly take such action over a single minor oversight?" Adam hesitated, then continued with cautious deliberation. They stated, "This decision is not solely predicated on that particular error. It stems from your conduct toward Miss Zoe Brooks, an individual they once held in high regard at the International Geneva Forum. To them, it was not an insignificant lapse, but rather definitive evidence of your unsuitability to represent the project." Leonard fell silent, overwhelmed by a bitter wave of shame. He finally grasped that his misstep was not merely an inadvertent remark or a momentary loss of control, but rather the cumulative outcome of years of ingrained arrogance and prejudice that he himself had cultivated. Now, he was compelled to endure the bitter consequences of his own actions. Adam quietly departed, leaving Leonard alone to gaze at the window pane that reflected his own failed visage. Leonard Dawson, the man who once boasted that nothing could ever undermine his standing, was left with nothing but bitterness, shame, and an overwhelming sense of despair. Meanwhile, in another sector of the city, Zoe was diligently dedicating herself to her new responsibilities. Entirely unaware that in the lofty echelons Leonard once occupied, he was grappling with the very tangible ramifications of the disrespect he had so carelessly shown her. Leonard now understood that he had forfeited far more than he had ever anticipated. Not merely a substantial contract, but the trust, respect, and the hard-earned reputation he had spent a lifetime meticulously building. While Leonard Dawson sat in a daze, his gaze fixed upon the city lights flickering mockingly outside his office window, life on the opposite side of town progressed at an entirely different tempo for Zoe Brooks. She toiled with unwavering dedication, diligently engaged in orchestrating the language and cultural training programs for La Papon's burgeoning staff. Programs founded upon her steadfast conviction in the transformative power of knowledge and the essential nature of mutual respect. One late afternoon, as Zoe savored a rare moment of respite after concluding a teaching session, she stood quietly beside the small, employee-exclusive window, observing the sunset-tinted clouds drifting overhead. She detected the soft, hesitant sound of approaching footsteps behind her and turned to find a familiar face contorted with an expression of nervous apprehension. It was Justin, Leonard Dawson's youngest assistant, a perpetually shy individual who rarely dared to speak in his boss's presence. Today, however, he appeared distinctly ill at ease, his eyes downcast and seemingly reluctant. "Hello, Miss Brooks," Justin murmured in a low, trembling voice, barely audible. Zoe offered a gentle nod, her calm eyes tinged with curiosity. She sensed that Justin would not have sought her out without a compelling reason. He hesitated, his fingers nervously brushing against his sleeve as he mustered his courage, then took a deep, steadying breath before continuing. I have come to offer my apologies, Miss Brooks. I realize this request should emanate from Mr. Dawson himself, but he was unable to bring himself to do so. He genuinely regrets the events that transpired, and I sincerely hope you can find it within yourself to understand." Zoe fell silent, observing Justin intently for a prolonged moment. She felt neither anger nor elation, only a quiet introspection as she processed his words. The prolonged quiet caused Justin, becoming increasingly uneasy, to focus more on the floor than on her, anticipating a response. At last, Zoe spoke, her tone gentle yet firm, conveying a message she wished Justin to fully comprehend. "Justin, do you comprehend why I've remained silent amidst the constant insults and disdain? It's because I understand that individuals seldom truly perceive another until they first learn to listen." Justin remained frozen, his eyes wide with astonishment. He had never conceived that after enduring so much pain and ridicule, Zoe could reply with such poise and insight. In that instant, he grasped that she was far more than simply a resilient woman. She possessed a profound intellect and an inherent dignity that few could rival. Zoe gazed intently into Justin's earnest, bewildered eyes and added softly, "I do not require a veiled apology from Mr. Dawson or anyone else, Justin. My enduring desire has always been for genuine respect, and I trust that from this point forward, he and anyone who has habitually underestimated others will come to appreciate the true significance of attentive listening and empathy." Justin stood unmoving, uncertain how to respond. He felt Zoe's words ignite something deep within, a truth he had never before acknowledged. He realized she had just imparted a priceless lesson on self-regard and compassion, values he vowed to carry forward. Zoe offered a subtle, proud smile and departed the employee lounge with an air of dignified grace. Justin watched her leave, his heart brimming with admiration and profound respect. He mused whether Leonard Dawson would ever truly grasp Zoe Brooks's inherent worth, as he now undeniably did. As Zoe moved confidently down the corridor, her gaze was purposefully fixed ahead. Her pronouncements were not merely a retort to Leonard or a message for Justin. They were a declaration to every person who had ever judged another based on their appearance or standing. Meanwhile, Justin remained still, his spirit awakened by the profound truths Zoe had imparted. For the first time, he understood that power and affluence do not define a person's intrinsic value. Rather, It is the intellect, self-respect, and dignity they cultivate internally. Leonard, though he had not been present to witness the exchange, would soon discover that his indirect apology could not mitigate the repercussions he now faced. He had forfeited not only the confidence of his former supporters, but also the final opportunity to truly acknowledge and honor an exceptional woman like Zoe Brooks. Zoe had now completely emerged from the shadow of scorn, standing strong, proud, and resolute. She recognized that from this day onward, no one could disregard her, for when she chose to speak, the entire world would be compelled to pay attention. From the very instant Zoe exited the staff room, her head held high, she knew a new chapter in her existence had truly commenced. The words she shared with Justin served not only as a personal liberation, but also as the inception of a journey she had long envisioned, utilizing her knowledge and communication skills to inspire others and reshape societal perceptions of hospitality and mutual regard. Before long, Zoe formally accepted Madame Deline Martaz's invitation to assume the role of La Papon's language and cultural instructor. Her inaugural session took place in a comfortable, unpretentiously furnished room situated behind the restaurant, attracting a diverse assembly of eager young servers and seasoned chefs, all keen to learn from her. Standing at the front of the room, Zoe displayed her characteristic gentle smile, her eyes radiating with enthusiasm as she addressed them. "Welcome, everyone, to our very first language and culture immersion. Before we commence, I wish for you all to understand that the most crucial aspect of service extends beyond merely delivering culinary creations to the table. It encompasses how we convey respect and understanding through our expressions and attitudes." Her students listened with rapt attention, their faces illuminated with admiration for Zoe's self-assurance and composed demeanor. She continued, her voice carrying both warmth and power. "Language is not merely a collection of inert words, it is an art form for communicating sentiment and heritage. When we select our vocabulary and intonation judiciously, we are not simply attending to patrons. We are crafting unforgettable encounters. That, in essence, is the genuine merit of our endeavors, fostering connection through both intellect and emotion." Every sentence uttered by Zoe resonated like a soft yet potent melody, permeating the minds of each learner and recalibrating their comprehension of their daily responsibilities. Soon, Zoe's classes became a cherished highlight of every workday at La Papon. The overall ambiance underwent a noticeable transformation as each team member diligently applied the fresh, insightful principles Zoe introduced into their interactions with guests. One afternoon, while Zoe was guiding a group of apprentices through the nuanced, precise enunciation of French culinary terms, Madame Deline entered the room unobtrusively. She positioned herself at the rear, beaming with pride at Zoe's dedication and the students' evident eagerness. "I am exceptionally pleased to observe your diligent engagement in these studies," Deline remarked, her tone gentle yet imbued with pride. "What Zoe is imparting to you transcends mere communication or linguistic proficiencies. It represents a profound lesson in the true value inherent in our daily occupations." Turning towards Zoe with affectionate admiration, she added, "Zoe, my gratitude for your contributions is immense. You are fundamentally transforming this establishment, not solely in its customer service protocols, but also within its cultural fabric and each employee's sense of personal dignity." The assembly responded with enthusiastic applause, their faces alight with pride at the privilege of learning from such a devoted mentor. Zoe inclined her head humbly, her heart overflowing as she witnessed the palpable, positive changes she had facilitated. Meanwhile, across the cityscape, Leonard Dawson continued to grapple with his lingering bitterness and sense of failure, confronting the ramifications of his own actions. News of Zoe's appointment as La Papon's cultural instructor reached him swiftly, intensifying his shame and regret. He found himself recalling the very day he first encountered Zoe, a modest server whom he had once dismissed and who was now universally esteemed and admired. Leonard recognized that his most significant misstep had been viewing others through a lens of arrogance and disdain. rather than striving to appreciate their intrinsic worth. His underestimation of Zoe had come at a considerable cost. His reputation, his career, and the trust of his key associates. Back within Zoe's classroom, every employee was now ardently practicing the lessons they had absorbed. Their approach to service had undergone a complete metamorphosis. Each patron interaction was characterized by genuine attentiveness, courteous discourse, and diligent listening. Patrons began to notice the restaurant's enhanced atmosphere, and La Papon's renown expanded, not solely for its exquisite gastronomy, but also for its refined, solicitous service. Owing to these tangible outcomes, Zoe rapidly garnered deep respect and affection from the entire staff. They perceived her not only as a dedicated educator, but also as a fount of inspiration and encouragement to continually affirm their own inherent value and dignity in their daily professional lives. In that fleeting yet luminous interval, Zoe surveyed her students, their eager bright eyes reflecting her own. She knew she had finally discovered the appropriate trajectory for her accumulated knowledge and experience. Zoe Brooks was no longer the overlooked server. She had ascended to the esteemed position of language instructor, an embodiment of self-respect and positive transformation within the close-knit community she held dear. The language and culture courses at La Papon gained ever-increasing renown, drawing widespread acclaim. Zoe could feel her life progressively unfolding into a new chapter, one meticulously authored with self-respect, unwavering perseverance, and a profound passion for learning. Each evening, as Zoe returned to her modest dwelling, she sensed with increasing clarity the profound metamorphosis her life was undergoing. What had once been a stark, impersonal studio now exuded warmth and vitality. Zoe's compact bookshelf was steadily accumulating volumes on linguistics, cultural studies, and philosophy. Upon the time-worn wooden desk where she prepared her lessons, a small vase held fresh blossoms, their delicate fragrance imbuing the room with cheer. The soft amber luminescence emanating from her reading lamps cast a cozy glow throughout the apartment, a stark contrast to the solitary, somber nights she had once endured. One weekend evening, as Zoe relaxed on her diminutive sofa, engrossed in a book, the door suddenly swung open. Na entered with a radiant smile, enveloping Zoe in an effusive embrace. "Zoe, you won't believe it. Today my friends couldn't cease discussing you. Everyone holds you in such high regard. I'm genuinely proud of you." Zoe offered a soft smile, setting her book aside and reciprocating her sister's embrace. "I'm delighted you're proud of me, but nah, you must remember that the most important thing is our own belief in our inherent worth, irrespective of external validation." Na gazed deeply into Zoe's eyes, her expression conveying unwavering trust and understanding. "I know, Zoe, but I truly want you to comprehend that your endeavors hold significance, not just for me, but for countless others. You are profoundly impacting people's lives. Have you truly grasped this?" Zoe was quietly moved, her heart swelling with unfeigned joy at her sister's heartfelt encouragement. In that moment, she understood that every hardship and trial she had encountered had been unequivocally worthwhile, for they had ultimately guided her toward discovering genuine purpose in her life by assisting and inspiring others through knowledge. While Zoe savored this simple moment of shared joy with her sister across town, Leonard Dawson experienced a decidedly different evening. He sat in solitude within his sleek, opulent apartment, his gaze vacant as he stared out at the star-dusted expanse of the night sky, devoid of any semblance of peace. Everything surrounding him felt utterly devoid of meaning. He recognized that he had relinquished the most invaluable treasures in life, not merely his reputation, authority, or material possessions, but the esteem and confidence of those who had once placed their faith in him. Leonard pondered whether, given the opportunity to revisit the past, he might make different choices. However, he knew that such a retrospective contemplation was now rendered irrelevant. The repercussions of his arrogance and disregard for others were irreversible. Back in Zoe's inviting apartment, the evening continued with the soft cadence of shared laughter between the two sisters. Na listened intently as Zoe articulated her promising aspirations for the future, discussing potential expansions of her language courses and invitations to address international forums. Zoe's voice resonated with an unshakable conviction in a bright future she had once deemed unattainable. "I firmly believe that life consistently presents second chances, provided we possess the courage to embrace them," Zoe stated, her eyes gleaming with confidence and hope. Na nodded, her eyes sparkling with faith. "I have always believed in you, Zoe. You are living testament that no matter how arduous life becomes, we can surmount its challenges and emerge stronger. You have already achieved this." Zoe returned her sister's heartfelt gaze with a gentle smile, feeling a wave of joy permeate her being, as if washing away all the accumulated sorrow and disappointment from her past. For the first time in many years, Zoe experienced a profound sense of liberation, not only from the prejudices and derision of others, but also the freedom to pursue the life she had always envisioned. Before retiring for the night, Zoe stood by the window, gazing out at the city's myriad twinkling lights, inhaling deeply to absorb the tranquility and elation that filled her soul. Na padded softly to her side and embraced her tightly, whispering into her sister's ear, "See, everyone finally recognizes you." "I always knew this day would arrive." Zoe smiled softly, nodding in agreement. "Yes, Nana. But I believe the most crucial aspect isn't whether others acknowledge me. It is that I have learned to perceive my own value and to live in accordance with my deeply held convictions." Together, they stood beneath the resplendent starlight, sharing this beautiful, meaningful moment in serene contentment and genuine happiness. Zoe understood that her journey was far from complete. However, she now possessed greater fortitude, enhanced self-assurance, and readiness to confront any forthcoming challenges, for she comprehended that a person's true worth originates from the heart, from acquired knowledge, and from unwavering courage. From this point forward, Zoe Brooks's existence had embarked upon a completely new trajectory, one she richly deserved, infused with purpose and radiance. And Zoe knew that regardless of what the future might bring, she would forge her own path with a dignity, self-respect, and confidence that no one could ever diminish. Zoe Brooks's narrative stands as irrefutable evidence that a person's inherent value is not determined by their outward appearance or social standing, but rather by the knowledge, integrity, and self-regard they cherish within their heart. Have you ever encountered or observed a situation akin to Zoe's? Please share your perspectives and experiences in the comments section below. If you appreciate inspirational accounts of self-respect and resilience in the face of adversity, similar to this one, kindly remember to click the like button, share this narrative with your friends and family, and subscribe to ensure you never miss any meaningful content in the future. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you in our next update.